Hey guys, welcome back to Free to Think. I'm Cody.
I'm Jacob.
And we've got a special guest today with us, Greg Haitz. Welcome, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. This is our first time with a guest, so we've got all the camera angles fixed up, but hopefully it works. Greg, tell us about yourself, man.
Yeah, so Greg Haitz, I'm pretty much a local guy, doctor of chiropractic, so business owner for 23 years, and I'm also currently running for Mesa County Treasurer. So that's all of that's got me busy. Father, I've got 3 kids. Wife's a real estate agent. 2 oldest are in college. Youngest, he's 10, and so that all keeps us busy.
What made you want to run for treasurer?
Sort of a long story, but I'll shorten it up real quick. So I ran for city council a couple times, and nonpartisan races like that are very challenging, but I learned a lot from it. And then I decided to take the Inside Mesa County class. I know, Cody, I think you've taken that a couple times.
Yeah.
So I took that twice. And in doing so, you learn basically about every county department and all the different functions of county government, which is phenomenal. If anyone has any interest at all, it's worth doing. It's a free class. And so did that twice, got to talking to Sheila Reiner quite a bit after the last class. Mm-hmm. And I thought, of all the county positions, electable positions, that one sparked my interest. I tend to be good with finance and numbers and, that sort of thing. And so her and I have been talking for a couple of years since then. And so, yeah, it's just kind of evolved into me throwing my hat in the ring.
Yeah, right on. It's an important job, and it's a more of a technical position. And you run partisan, but it is really a nonpartisan position. You're serving everybody, and so is the commissioner. We're more political than a treasurer is, but at the same time, we're providing services for the community in a nonpartisan way.
Yeah, treasurer's not going to advocate for policy, and we're not going to be changing, tax code or anything like that. So yeah, basically a department head. So
yeah, well, right on. Yep. Well, that's not why we had you on today to talk about treasurer stuff, but rather election stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys listened to Trump's speech a couple of weeks ago on elections, but it really was just sparking a lot of thoughts and ideas. And I was like, who could we talk to this about? And I know I've had a lot of conversations in the past with you about elections. Mesa County has been through the ringer when it comes to elections, fraud, all that stuff. Like we're like almost on the central hub of election talk. So
some people said tip of the spear, but
tip of the spear is good.
Yeah.
There's a couple other counties that get mentioned when you talk about election conspiracies or nonetheless, but I actually find it really hard to talk about with people elections in an objective way.
Yeah.
Because they kind of either take one of two sides. They're on the Tina Peters bandwagon, and unless you think 2020 was absolutely stolen, they won't even talk to you.
Yeah.
And then there's the other side who says if you're anywhere near or if you even mention election integrity, you're a nut. Mm-hmm. And it's like, why can't we just objectively in the middle talk about how we can improve our election system?
Right.
Because we can. You can always improve something. You can always talk about vulnerabilities, but we just find ourselves in this weird space and time where we can't even talk about this stuff in a meaningful way.
It is odd.
What say you?
Oh, I just think it's interesting how it seems like there's an elephant in the room in Mesa County specifically, right? The focus was on the Dominion voting machines, when it seems like all the evidence points to just the voter rolls and how, if we took a careful look at the voter rolls, clean those up a bit, it's kind of the 80-20 principle of there's got to be something that we can do that's 20% effort that would fix 80% of the problem. And it seems like the voter rolls is that. So it's just ironic that in these conversations that you do have, they tend towards those Dominion voting machines are so evil. And it's like, well, okay, that's a talking point, yeah, but let's talk about the system of tabulating and keeping records of all the potential voters. And, if a high percentage of those people are just in there erroneously or for whatever reason they got in there when they shouldn't, let's clean that up, start there, and everything will be better from there on. So start at the source,
Well, let's talk about real vulnerabilities, right? I remember early on when we're going through the whole Tina Peters debacle, and I said something in public hearing to the effect that, like, if we really want to focus on election integrity, let's start focusing on voter rolls, because once the ballots actually get to the office and once they're actually verified, I mean, the Dominion process is pretty foolproof. And we also do an audit afterwards where we take a sampling of all the paper ballots. We read the paper ballots. We read how Dominion divined that paper ballot. And if it's not exact, they have to double, triple the sample. And I said something like, the problem's not there. The problem's before the ballot actually gets to the office, which is what we're talking about. We're talking about voter verification. And you and I talked about this several months ago, but it seems like we're all on this spectrum. There's perfectly secure elections and there's perfectly accessible elections. And we're all on this continuum somewhere, right? Conservatives lean more towards security. We want our elections to be perfectly secure so we can trust our elections. And it seems like the progressive left is more like we want it perfectly accessible. We don't care how secure it is. We want it perfectly accessible, which means there's going to be fraud, which means people are going to be voting that shouldn't be voting. So how can we talk about getting it as secure as we possibly can? Because I think most people you talk to are going to be like, yeah, we agree it should be secure. And then most people you talk to, they should say, yeah, and people should be able to access it if they're registered voters, right? Or if they're citizens of the United States. Like, there's this happy middle where I think most people are going to agree that we want as much security as we can get, and we want to make sure that we're not creating hurdles like they did with the Jim Crow laws, for people to get in and vote. But we're just so hypersensitive about these types of arguments. So I guess if you guys didn't have anything just to start with, I wanted to jump into some of the things that Trump said in his speech. And that was, China has obtained U.S. voter data and they're targeting our elections. So Trump's point is that China obtained voter information in huge numbers. And Greg, you'll know this. That type of information is actually quite accessible.
It is, and I don't know that anyone's really refuted that part of his claim, but that doesn't mean that votes were changed or elections were compromised. It just means China had access to a lot of our information, which a lot of it is publicly available. How they access that, I'm not sure. I don't know that he actually went into that or if the report did. It's concerning, that China's interested in our voter rolls and that information. But again, it doesn't mean that votes were switched or elections were fraudulent.
Because if you run for office, you already have, not just because you're running, anybody would have it, but you have access just by making a small payment to voter data info.
Yeah.
Like, you could know exactly what your neighbor thinks, whether they're Republican, Democrat, unaffiliated, whether they're an NRA member,
right,
whether they're a member of the Sierra Club.
Yep.
Like, the amount of information you can get with just a subscription to an app is mind-boggling.
Yep.
And let's be honest, it's information we give out to private companies.
Yeah.
And so they're tracking your data. They're tracking who you are. So I know exactly, before I knock on a door, I know almost exactly who these people are going to be. I know if they're going to be hostile towards my belief system. I know if they're going to be right in line with my belief system. So the idea that China has access to voter data info is nothing new. We have always known that China is always going to be involved in our elections in some way, try to influence our elections. So I don't really think that claim was like mind-boggling.
It's not a big smoking gun in my mind. It's concerning that they're interested, but
so is Russia. So is every other country in the world. I
Yep.
mean, we are like at the top of the heap, and everybody's looking at us, trying to influence us in some way, shape, or form. That doesn't mean we rest on our laurels, but we got to get more focused and make sure that we're focused on the right things.
right.
So how do you think China would, because obviously they're not going to use like individual information on people to sway those people. They're going to look at demographics and regions and see how things are distributed. So if China had, a region-wide sort of survey of all the political data for an area, how would they use that for manipulation if they wanted to? Which
maybe like Facebook did, right, with Zuckerberg, where if you know the political leanings of your platform users, now you can start to influence that by curating their feed and what they see. Mm-hmm. And maybe China would do something similar, right? Maybe they would start to run ads or just whatever, to start manipulating feeds to where certain individuals see certain information and propaganda, and that could potentially sway elections. I think Zuckerberg, he even said, he's like, I regret what I did. He's like, because I think we actually skewed some of those votes. And you look at YouTube too. YouTube, if you watch this kind of video, now you're going to start to see more of those types of videos. and it's very curated. And they do that by design to try to keep you on the platform. And this has been going on for a long time. We tend to not want to think about it because it's pretty creepy. Just like to your point, you can take consumer data and match it with voter data, and knocking on someone's door, you know that, oh, this person shops at Cabela's, they shop at Sportsman's Warehouse, they're an NRA member. That's creepy.
It is creepy.
And it's all publicly available. You have to buy it.
Yeah.
You purchase that, and then use AI or some other system to connect that to the voter rolls. And now you know a lot more about these people and their activities and how they live their lives. It's creepy.
Yeah, well, and you also know how people respond to certain inputs, right? And you're just slowly changing the dial, whether it's on TikTok, which is still a Chinese-owned company, right?
Yeah.
So you're just slowly changing the dial, the algorithm, whatnot, just to slowly So yeah, we know there's influence on American voters. And you can't do anything about it.
No.
You'll never be able to do anything about it. What type of influence and what type of influence they're having on the actual election. Now, if they're in our election system changing votes, that's a completely different story.
Different conversation.
But having access to voter files, which is public data in America, means the entire world, the globe, the universe has access to U.S. voter files. So, yeah, nothing groundbreaking there by any means.
So what are your thoughts then on Trump administration? And it was Harmeet Dillon. She's been trying to get the unredacted voter rolls and voter information from all the states. I looked into it a little bit. It sounds like they're wanting voter data as well as driver's license information, partial social security numbers. I could see the concern from certain states. But again, how much of that data is actually available? But then if that all goes into a big file with one administration, I understand the concern. If this was Biden or someone else that I didn't vote for, I don't know that I would be comfortable with them having this large, federal database of all the states' voter data. But at the same time, when states like Colorado just absolutely refuse to turn anything over, even though some of that could just be a simple core request, I can see both sides of that argument. I don't know if you've given that much thought.
I do, and I have mixed feelings. One of them is, I'm worried about the central state having all of this unredacted information.
Right.
I like the federalist system where we have 50 different states running these things. I see the value in it, and I think it's a bit ironic too, because Trump's talking about kind of this centralization of election information or data on voters, whereas when we were going through this back in 2020, 2021, the conservative side was very concerned about an organization called ERIC, which is Election Registration Information Coalition or something like that. But basically what they did, they were a nonprofit run by government, but basically collated all the states that would cooperate. And I think there's only half the states that are cooperating.
Yeah.
But they would collate that data and they would say, hey, Joe Schmo is registered in California and Texas. And they would notify California and Texas that Joe Schmo is dual registered in different states. So they wouldn't let him to vote in either. So you had to be a participating state.
Yep.
California didn't have access to Colorado's data. It was only from this nonprofit, government-run nonprofit. And I'm telling you what, conservatives had such an issue with that idea that there would be this centralized entity that had access to voter information and files and stuff like that. So it seems a bit ironic now that we're talking about centralize the voter information, and it's like, well, we already tried to do that, and you guys fought it. And now that Trump's in power, we want to do it. But what happens when the next administration, the Democrat, is in power? Then we're gonna be like, no, we can't centralize this information. So there's just this seesaw back and forth, accordion, and so I think something like that is good because no, you shouldn't be able to vote in Colorado and in Texas.
Right.
That I think that's just a fundamental belief in election integrity where people say no, we don't want people double voting. So how do you again provide access, but still have a secure system where one person, one vote?
Because if you're a Colorado resident and you happen to be visiting family in Texas and you die there, Colorado doesn't know.
Correct.
And that would be a way for those states to then be able to communicate. There's a death certificate here, it matches a voter roll there. Now we take them off the voter rolls. Otherwise, I have a neighbor 2 doors down. They've been getting their mother's ballot for I don't know how many election cycles now, which is interesting too, because at a certain point that she should become inactive. But you have to have returned election mail for that to happen. And there's all these, checks and balances there. But she died in a different state.
Yeah.
And so I told him, it's like, you probably need to go down to the clerk's office and have a conversation. At some point, she'll be probably taken off the voter rolls or made inactive. But Colorado doesn't know that she's deceased.
Correct. And that's what Eric used to do. I don't know if we're still participating in Eric. It got pretty controversial for a while. But that's what Eric would do if the state that she died in was an Eric state.
Right, exactly.
Then they would be able to collate that data, make the match, and say, hey, Colorado, you got someone living or who was voting in your state who died in Texas or whatnot. But Texas was not an operating state within Eric.
Right.
Eric was usually more liberal Democrat states at the time. So, again, it's kind of come full circle. Even with election concerns about the Dominion system, right? Like before Trump got elected, like you got these videos back in like 2012 of Kamala Harris saying, we can't trust these Dominion systems and stuff like that. And it's just like, it's so ironic. It just keeps coming full circle.
It does.
So can we recognize where our actual vulnerabilities are and do something about it? The answer for me is no, because nobody wants to touch it. The Democrats don't want to touch anything like that with a 10-foot pole. In fact, they made laws to make it even more difficult in some areas. And again, I think that's, if we talk about like Tina Peters' net contribution to the state of Colorado, it's actually made it worse because there's this knee-jerk reaction away from it. And now local election officials actually have less power and less control over their own systems and stuff like that because of what Tina did. So again, we can't have an honest, open, rational discussion about elections.
And it's really unfortunate because, like, to your point, if you even mention election integrity or are there vulnerabilities, now all of a sudden, oh, that's Jim Crow 2.0.
Oh, yeah, it's
just
absurd.
Like, it's just absurd.
ID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Show ID.
The ironic thing is, right, it's like what I heard that in the state-run or city-run New York stores, right, you got to show ID, but you don't have to show ID to vote. And it's just ridiculous to
Isn't
me to
that
think
ironic?
that, like,
You listen to that clip and she's like, in something kind of adjacent to a library card. And then she moves on really quickly. It's like, wait a minute.
oh,
is that an ID? Is that what you just
dangerous ground.
Picture on
here.
that ID card? Or
Right.
Yeah. So, but it's ironic that, you're saying that in Colorado specifically, the sort of election has been consolidated to more of a Denver thing instead of a local thing. And here we're saying, well, if we consolidate it on the national level. But, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the fact that people can just go to a different state so easily, right? 100 years ago, 250 years ago, people didn't really move around a lot, right? So it made sense. And then the communication was so slow, so it made sense to organize the elections on a more local level, and then you can consolidate the results and you can move them to Denver, move them to Washington or whatever through the Pony Express. And just the fact that people and information are so mobile these days. And the other thing is that, in these voter rolls, I mean, that's federal elections that people are voting in too. So there is a point to be made that there probably should be some national voter registry of people that are going to vote in national elections,
And I think that's the rub, right? And that's Trump's, he's like, well, if you're considering federal elections, it seems like the Fed should have access to some of those voter rolls to see how secure they are for federal elections.
Sure.
But then we have federalism where states and state legislatures and secretaries of states run those elections and they set laws around those elections. And so that's the rub, right? It's like that balance between the state and the Fed. And, well, sometimes we vote in the federal election, but not always. And who's controlling all that?
You're right. And you're not going to change your election process just for a federal election. So if the feds do have some control on how those elections, it is going to monolithically even out how elections are run across the states, which I think is some of the fear from states.
Right.
Now, again, if this was a Democrat administration, it would be the Republicans that were screaming about federalizing the elections, things like that.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
What department do you think all this information would go under in the federal government? Oh, I stumped you.
We need an Orwellian name for elections at the federal level.
What is it? The Department of Approved Opinions?
Yeah, there you go.
The Ministry of Election Truth.
Exactly.
That's a good one. I like that. That should be on a shirt.
Oh,
Be like, I work for them.
I'll make that.
All right on. I like it. So I'm just wondering, because it's like, okay, so all this information gets collected, collated, and sent to the federal government. I mean, the sort of like boots on the ground administration state probably looks the same, whether it's a Republican or Democrat in the federal government. So I would imagine that the people actually, running this operation and being tasked with managing all this information are going to be the same people no matter what, side of the aisle is in the White House. I mean, is it
You're talking about the deep state?
I'm talking about just the massive administrative state of bureaucrats that just exist, no matter who's at the top. They just float along, and those are the people that would probably be managing this whole operation. I mean,
unelected, and they just
they're just
persist
government
in the
employees,
system.
you know.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's the administrative state, but that's why it's elected officials are so important.
yeah, but I think
give us-
you know, if you're thinking that like the Trump administration, like the small Trump administration, is going to take this information and then just hang on to it in perpetuity for whatever reason, I mean that doesn't seem like it's going to be the actual case. It's going to be more of just it goes into the bureaucracy and it's there.
Yeah, and I don't want to assume intention. I listened to Trump's entire speech. I know he's still sour about 2020. I don't want to assume intentions, but it's hard for me not to think the only reason he's wanting to collate all this up front and get all the information from the states is to say, see, they cheated in 2020. Like that's the skeptic in me. I think he's genuinely interested in election integrity, but getting all that information collating at the federal level, I don't think is the route forward. So some of me still, again, the critical side of me says he's just trying to prove 2020 was stolen still. And that's why Democrat states are not giving them their election data and stuff like that. And it's turned into a tit for tat.
And knowing Trump, I would say that that's true. Yet, I think he was really strategic in his speech because I think he only mentioned 2020 election maybe once.
Yeah.
And he didn't really spend any time on it. I'm like, that's...
But everybody's thinking it.
But everyone's thinking it, right?
Everyone's
That's the
waiting for
first
him
thing
to,
that
like,
comes to mind.
Launch into the tirade.
Yeah.
But I still think something like Eric is where we need to be. And, you know, who has accountability over Eric? It's a nonprofit. But I think something like that, away from the federal government, but still kind of government run nonprofit who nobody has, they're the only ones with the information. It's kind of like the blockchain, right? Like you can't see the other side of the transaction, but it verifies who people are kind of in a cryptic way. And I think as technology advances, we can do this. We can make it to where people are only voting once. We can make it more secure and accessible. Like this is not a mountain we can't climb here in America. We're the most innovative country in the entire world. We can do this. It's just politics gets in the way sometimes.
Yeah.
And we go to such lengths with the election judges to make sure that there is representation on both sides because both sides will keep the other side honest, right? I mean, I don't see any way that this couldn't be, you know, styled after that just to say, we know that this is a hyper-partisan issue, so let's just stack the parties on both sides in equal measure to look at this data to make sure that, you know, there's you know, sort of layered review and stuff like that just to make sure that there's no funny business because, you know, in the end, if we go at it from under the guise of we're going to make sure it's nonpartisan the whole way, well, everybody's partisan in their own opinion, right? But if you say, okay, we're just going to assume human nature is what it is, and we're going to put Democrats on one side and Republicans on the other side, they're both looking at the same data, and it has to correlate in the end, and then you can have those checks and balances. So, you know, there's already systems in place that in the election system itself that kind of seem like it might be able to accomplish this and keep the integrity of the whole data set, you know, intact.
Okay, so question. And I'm not speaking ideologically. I mean, I have the ideal way to vote in America. It's never going to happen. So practically speaking, get rid of voting machines or not? I mean, ideally, the most secure election you're going to have is in person, same day. I get it. Like people are making that argument. That is never going to happen. In Mesa County, I think the last stat I saw was 97% of the people utilize mail-in voting. So even though 30% of them are saying we need in-person, same-day voting, they're using mail-in balloting because it's easy and convenient. And once you give the voters kind of that luxury, it's going to be it is impossible to pull it back.
Well, it seems like, I mean, let's talk about it. That is the area where there's the most vulnerability, right? Because you have the voter rolls and then the physical paper ballots are made, manufactured, and then distributed through the mail based on who's in the voter rolls. So once that mail-in ballot, like between the time of when it leaves the Secretary of State's office or wherever they're manufactured.
It's a private company in Arizona for Mesa County, but yeah.
Oh, okay. When they leave Arizona to when they actually get read in the Dominion machine. That's the vulnerability, right? Because you have all these ballots that are just invalid, but they can get filled out and counted. And if we look at the example in New Jersey, right, the reason that they knew that there was 6,000 people that shouldn't have been on the voter rolls and 400 of them had actually voted is because those end parts are actually pretty secure and accurate and real. And then all the skullduggery happened in the middle, right?
It does, yeah.
So, they have all that data to say that, 400 people shouldn't have voted and they actually did vote. It's because their voting system, after it enters their equivalent of the county, building, is pretty secure and the data is good. But in the middle, that's when all the people that shouldn't have voted received ballots that had been made based on the voter rolls. And they're like, well, I got a ballot, so I must be able to vote, right?
Yeah.
So they just send it in. And so that's the vulnerability.
That's a vulnerability. And let me maybe defend Colorado's process a little bit. I know I get in trouble for defending Colorado's process. And I think it can improve. But so someone gets a ballot in the mail. Mm-hmm. They vote it, and then they have to sign it. And then when it gets back to the elections center, it goes through this signature verification process. So Mesa County has on file signatures for Jacob, signatures for Greg, and for me that I've used in the past. And if it doesn't match with a certain amount of accuracy, it pops it, and then you have to come and cure that ballot. So we had, a couple years ago, a couple U.S. Postal Service workers who were thinking, we're going to put this system to the test. Little did they know that this is a felony offense to try to put this to the test. Yep. But they took something like 15 ballots. They each filled out half of them, and they just signed random signatures. And believe it or not, 3 of them actually made it through, and that's a whole other story. And state law was circling around that issue last year. But 3 of them actually made it through, but the other 12 got kicked. And so they started an investigation, and they found out these 2 ladies did it. And at least one of them spent some time in jail for the lady who was the ringmaster,
So is the felony the fraud, or is the felony the fact that they voted?
The felony is the fraud.
Yeah.
And they identified 3 that squeaked through. And the reason it squeaked through, we have a verification process in Mesa County. So if a ballot gets kicked for signature, it goes to a review of 2 judges. And those 2 one judge. And if the judge is looking, because sometimes the computer can't quite get it, but if a judge can say, yes, that's definitely their signature.
And these are election judges.
These are election judges. Yeah. That single judge can pass that through. Now, we had an older lady who was doing it. She was getting tired. She'd been doing it all day long. And I think she just got to the point where she was just passing things through. If she doesn't pass it through, then it goes to a judge of 2 people, and they look at it. I've been making the argument that 2 need to be up front. And if they don't pass it, then it goes to the single. But instead, it's a single person who can push it through. And she pushed these 3 through just probably out of exhaustion. And that's where, technology is far better at times than a human eye, because it kicked it for a reason. In fact, it kicked all 15. The single judge is the one that sent the 3 through. It wasn't the machine. The machine kicked all 15 because of signature verification problems. The other thing, too, that's nice in Colorado is the second you vote or the second someone votes for you, if you're signed up for an automatic notification, you get a notification. So if I get an email that says, Cody, you voted, and I haven't voted, I've got a problem. I'm walking down there and saying, I have not voted yet. So it's not the best system. Can it be better? It can absolutely better, but it's a good system. It's a decent system given the amount of access we've decided to give the voters. And yes, I think Colorado legislature would like to see more access. Yeah. And in fact, there's cities who said it doesn't matter if you're legal or illegal in this country. We want you to vote in our municipality, and they've done that. It wouldn't surprise me if a couple states tried to do that, but like some of the bigger cities have allowed, because they're living in their community, you can vote in our elections. And
I think some of those checks and balances should be taken advantage of by conservatives. And I have a lot of conservative friends that are like, oh no, I vote on election day in person. And I get it. It's a little sacrosanct in their mind.
Yeah.
But they also feel like that strengthens election integrity, because then they can't steal my vote. I would say the opposite's true. If you vote early, it gets counted, you get the notification. Now, if someone else tries to vote, it's going to pop up immediately as fraudulent.
Yep.
So vote early to stop that from happening. And that also helps the candidates if you're out chasing ballots, because if all the conservatives wait till the day of to vote, now I'm out knocking doors the day before,
yep,
trying to convince them to vote for me. And, I was going to vote for you. I was just waiting till the day of. Well, 100%. If they would have voted 2 weeks ago, those systems automatically take those names out. So then I know I don't need to knock that door anymore or make that phone call because they've already cast their ballot.
Yep.
And so we're actually kind of getting in our own way. Yeah.
I mean, the only nice thing about, and I say this from a partisan perspective, but the only thing nice about conservatives voting late is that initial count on Tuesday night,
yep.
You always know conservatives are going to double that or something.
Exactly.
Right? Because we could be down 1,000 votes, but
yep.
we know conservatives wait until the absolute last minute to vote.
Wait till those same day ballots start getting counted. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
We'll pull ahead. That's true.
That's funny. So I had a thought and then it flew away. But you're talking about, what about this in California where they have, I mean, in today's day and age, why does it take 2 weeks for all the ballots to get counted in California? Your thoughts?
I think, I mean, again, that's kind of a state by state thing, but a lot of that's going to be, overseas ballots,
military ballots,
ballots. You got to wait and count some of those up. And I don't think we'd ever want to disenfranchise, that voter pool. But at the same time, it's like, we've got voter day, not voter month.
Yeah.
And that, I think that continues to erode any idea of election integrity for some people.
It does.
It's like, well, let's just wait till the very end and, see how it comes out and then give it 2 more weeks. And especially when you get like lots of ballots coming in and they're just skewing one way. It's like, is that possible? Yeah. Sure. At a certain point, statistically, it's not. But then that, again, further erodes, any conversation around election integrity for some people.
It seems to me like we should take advantage of statistical probability too, of just, statistics, it's one of those, it has set laws. It's a science. It's a mathematical discipline. So the process of voting should follow statistical processes pretty closely. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't, okay, that triggers an investigation, right? Because it's like, okay, we know what the voter demographic is and we know the kind of propensity of people to vote whenever. And if we apply statistics to that and something very strange happens, like a 10,000 ballot dump at 2 a.m., that all skews in one direction.
Right.
And it's like, okay, there's very clearly something going on. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe the truck got stuck on the highway and they finally got it out and then they brought all the ballots in. I don't know. But it seems like it's enough of an anomaly to trigger something. So why don't we just take the power of statistics and then apply that to the problem to at least identify anomalies?
Agreed. But also say there's nuance to process as well. Like, and I don't even know what you're referencing, the 10,000 ballot count drop, whatever. But
that's just like the anecdotal evidence I've heard of just like, oh yeah, well, they very conveniently found 10,000 ballots at 2 a.m. And
But I know like our system, they count it up and then they'll do a drop. So a 10,000 ballot drop is not unheard of, maybe 2 a.m, maybe a bit suspect, as you say. But yes, I believe we should use statistics. I think that's incredibly valuable, but I also think it's nuanced by just process. And I think the taking a month to count it is state law and state process that is mucking it up. Like, I think they require certain things to happen before you can announce. I mean, Mesa County at 7:02 usually, we're getting out probably 95% of the vote. It's just that hour from like 3 to 7 that hasn't been counted yet. So they could get it out a lot early. Why they don't, I think it's due to probably state law and people probably spin narratives from it. Like, why is it taking so long with modern technology? We could have hand counted these things quicker, things like that, which I agree with them. Like, you could probably hand count in a week.
Yeah.
Whereas this is taking months to actually get a final vote tally.
I mean, I just look at the difference between like Florida and California. Obviously, 2 immensely different administrative sort of ways of doing things, but
well, like in California, I think Spencer Pratt maybe would be a good example, right?
Yeah.
It's like he's winning on election night, but then we have to wait a week later to find out that he lost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, are there really that many outstanding ballots that skewed the other way that you can be the winner on election night? Not that they call him a winner, right? But just like it looks like he's out ahead, but then 2 weeks later he can end up losing the election. That just feels.
Isn't that ranked choice voting?
That is ranked choice voting.
Yeah. And that's
part of it too, right?
That's part of it too.
And it makes it much more complicated. And my stance has always been like, let's not make elections more complicated. Let's make them less complicated. Because if the average person can't even explain what ranked choice voting is, you've got these runoffs. It's just super complicated. It's expensive. And then like Bobby Gross said, there's that much more opportunity for fraud as well.
100%.
Because now you've got custody of ballots, and then now we got to send out more ballots, and you're going to vote again for your next choice, and it compounds the issues.
I mean, we've all been in those meetings where we have kind of a runoff, and we have to do a ballot 5 or 6 times, and then it's like by the end, people are just like, "Oh my gosh, what are we doing here?" It's like an hour-long meeting becomes 5 hours, and it's like, "Oh, this is not good." So that's ranked choice voting, just overall.
I mean, ideologically, philosophically, like I can make the case for ranked choice voting.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, if you think deeply about it, I really like the concept of it
on paper.
Yeah. However, when you try to go and implement it, you confuse the living snot out of people, and they don't trust it.
Yep.
And if you don't have a system that people understand and that they trust, you have no system at all.
Yep.
And for that reason probably alone, ranked choice voting is just not in the cards for me right now. In the state of Colorado, municipalities have the ability to change to ranked choice voting
For a while now.
Yeah, and City of Grand Junction has flirted with the idea, but I think they keep coming to the point where our clerk is saying, okay, we're going to have half the ballot that's ranked choice and half the ballot that's not. So please don't do that. And they haven't done this to this point yet. But yeah, again, in theory, I like the idea, but I just don't think it's implementable. You look at Alaska; they implemented it, and the year later they voted it out.
Yeah,
because nobody trusted the election, right? And hate Sarah Palin. It was like she was ahead and then she was behind. Same thing with Spencer Pratt. It was like he was ahead, then he's behind because of ranked choice voting. Right. And if you look at the mechanics of it, you're like, I get it, I understand it, blah, blah, blah. But still, yeah, he was ahead, now he's not. Who's manipulating the system?
Right.
So,
plus, it does remove a checks and balance. I mean, look at the extreme nature of California, of just okay, and here in Colorado too, to some extent, it's like we need and of course I'm benefiting myself because as a conservative, it's like I don't want the liberal voice to be the only voice, but we need the checks and balance in the viewpoints, and ranked choice voting just allows that checks and balance viewpoint to just be eroded, right? Because if you have, four of the same political party all in the top tiers of your ranked choice vote, then it's like, where's the opposition voice? It's not even represented. So if you have, people malign the two-party system, but at least the two-party system, there's a clear checks and balance and opposition.
Yeah.
So, and it is much simpler, right? It's just like, there's nuances for what political parties stand for, but it's still, you're kind of on one side or the other, or you're being torn apart in the middle. And at least it's a lot simpler that way.
Well, if I was a betting man, I'd say Colorado's probably going to be there in the next decade or two.
There's definitely a strong push. I mean, we've got local groups like Restore the Balance. They're really advocating for it. We've got
Forward Party, Courageous Colorado, which one of our council members is on their board of directors now, and they're doing a speaking tour around the state. They're really pushing for ranked choice voting.
Yeah. Say Courageous Colorado?
Courageous Colorado. Yeah, it's a newer nonprofit that started up in Boulder.
Boulder.
Yeah, but they're nonpartisan. But yeah, there's definitely a push for it.
Nonpartisan from Boulder. Okay, cool.
And again, I get it. I understand it.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's right. I mean, the electorate has to trust the system.
And on paper, like, look at the Colorado House in the last 10 years, we would have picked up a decent amount of seats just because of the libertarian vote.
Yep.
It would have cleaned up the libertarian vote. And now there's a little bit of a gentleman's handshake between the Republicans and Libertarians, not to be spoilers in our races.
Correct.
But we would have picked up a lot more House seats.
With ranked choice voting
in Colorado. Mm-hmm. So on paper, I can make the argument it'd be a net positive for us in a lot of races as Republicans. Yet it's complicated. I think it disenfranchises voters.
So you're taking the principled approach.
Yeah, imagine that.
Man, principle costs something, doesn't it?
It does.
Everybody has their price. $2 up front and a head.
So I wanted to touch on the SAVE Act too, because I know the progressive side likes to demonize the SAVE Act, but I went through the SAVE Act this week and I'm like, what's the problem here? Yeah. And I think most Americans, if they understand what the SAVE Act actually says, I mean, it's pretty simple. It's prove that you're an American, with some photo ID for elections. And there's always the Jim Crow argument. You're trying to create the hurdle to entry is too high. You're trying to keep out poor people. But within the SAVE Act, they have release mechanisms. Like if you can't do it, we'll figure out a way. And they provide several other means by which you can prove that you're a citizen, to the point where at some point you're signing an affidavit saying I'm a citizen.
Right.
So the SAVE Act just wants you to prove that you're a citizen. And it's going to remove every hurdle if you absolutely can't pass it. But like you said, even to get into a grocery store in New York now, you have to show some form of ID. I mean, the idea that showing ID is somehow a Jim Crow, maybe back in the day,
Maybe.
when you had to take a test to get an ID,
Right.
or you had to clear some hurdle. But right now, you don't have to clear any hurdle just to get an ID.
Used to have to own land.
Yeah.
Used to have to, make a pledge of your faith, at least on a state level. A lot of states ran that way. All that's gone. So there's not really those hurdles that we used to have. You watch all those videos. I'm sure they're all curated to a certain extent, but the man on the street, it's like, oh, what do you think about, migrants voting, illegal aliens or non-documented, individuals voting in our elections? Oh, I think it's fine because they're here and they need to have a vote. All right, well, what if we went to Mexico or Venezuela? Do you think it's cool if we vote in their elections? Well, no. Do you see the problem?
Yeah,
and then
100%.
And most people are like, yeah, you're making a good point. Like, we can't just go to England or some other country, walk across their border and vote in their elections. That just makes no sense at all. But yet, we want to allow that here. And I know some municipalities, I think New York and others, have allowed undocumented individuals to vote in their municipal elections. Obviously can't on federal elections. Mm-hmm. But I think, after the New Jersey debacle, we're starting to realize, like, some of these individuals are actually ended up on the voter rolls. And some of them, not the majority, but some of them voted. Mm-hmm. We even have the same issues with people moving from other states into Colorado, and we have open primaries. I talked to Bobby Gross. We had, 450 individuals cast both ballots as an independent voter, Republican and Democrat ballot, and they both get nullified, and then, their vote's not even counted. And it's not because they're being nefarious. Maybe a few people think they could squeak it through, but it's confusing. And she said it was predominantly people that had moved here within the last couple of years from another state.
Yeah.
They didn't understand that you can't just cast two ballots.
Yep.
And you can't blame them.
Yeah.
So maybe some voter education needs to happen, but that's just, when you go from state to state, there can be those variations. But some states, you see more of those illegals on the voter rolls, and it's concerning. And so, yeah.
It always comes back to those voter rolls.
Yes.
I mean, every conversation sort of starts at the system level, and then it ends at the voter rolls. So, it might give you a little bit of the ick to know that the federal government has control, or not control, but at least access to all voter information. Like, okay, if we can use it to clean it up, I mean, that sounds good to me. Because who was the guy that ran for Secretary of State a couple years ago? And he had done that. He had gotten the Colorado voter rolls, and he had just like put them in an Excel sheet.
I remember.
He was like an Irish or Scottish guy.
Yeah.
And he said, in like 2 hours, I noticed just a ton of anomalies, right? The anomalous, it's like, why are there 20 people getting ballots at this one like business location?
Right.
And just stuff like that.
Or
it's
an empty lot.
Yeah. And it's like, if he can uncover that in a couple hours, it doesn't seem like it would be that hard, And if it's, I know it's politics, but they would probably say it's too much money. There's not enough money for us to go and put the manpower behind purging the voter rolls and then re-registering people. It's like,
well, and you look at Colorado and a lot of states, I mean, the Secretary of State, it's a partisan position.
Mm-hmm.
They're Republican or Democrat or whatever. And I don't like how much control the Secretary of State has over the voter rolls. Like, that is concerning to me. So if they have an appetite for cleaning those up, and most voter rolls are bloated by design, because we have motor voting. So, my kiddos, when they're 16, they go down to get their driver's license, and then they're automatically registered to vote.
Pre-registered.
Right. They can't vote yet, but they're pre-registered. And depending on which DMV individual you're talking to, they might ask them if they want to align with a party or not. I've talked to individuals where that question's been posed, and where it hasn't.
Okay.
If it's not, or if they don't answer, they're automatically registered as an independent. That's, I think, one of the reasons we have so many unaffiliated in Colorado. But with motor voting, it's like everyone gets registered to vote, whether they really want to vote or not.
Correct.
So now you've got people that are disinterested in elections and voting that are registered. They're going to get a ballot when they're 18.
Yep.
Again, a fairly disinterested voter. And then it's all these steps you have to go through to then take someone off the voter rolls. So that's where oftentimes you hear those arguments. Oh, we've got more people registered to vote in this county than actual citizens per the census. Well, some of that is just because everyone gets registered to vote, but it's hard to take people off the roll. So then you end up with 110%, of the locals are registered to vote, but we don't even have that many people here. And so then you've got these ballots floating around in the mail, and, these are the images that people, conjure up. It's like, they're stacking up in apartment complexes and anyone can just grab a ballot. And I appreciate some of those concerns, but it's just the nuance of that is like, it's super easy to register to vote. The the threshold to entry is really low, but then to get someone off, much more difficult.
It's much more difficult. The state of Colorado actually makes it quite hard to remove somebody from the voter rolls.
And if you have a Secretary of State that's disinterested in cleaning those up and removing some of those, that's a lot of power consolidated to one person.
And the rational person goes, why wouldn't you want clean voter rolls?
Right.
And if there's any pushback to that question, you start thinking nefarious thoughts.
Yep.
Like, what are they doing?
Right.
So, I mean, it doesn't help when we don't want to clean up our voter rolls, access or not.
Right. Yep.
By the way, his name was Mike O'Donnell.
There you go.
Okay.
And I think
he had a very impassioned speech.
And he's still putting out information. He still pulls the voter lists, which they're always changing, right? So I think he pulls them once a month, and he pays for the state level, which I don't know how much that costs. In Mesa County, it's like $50. State level is probably more, and then he goes through and analyzes, and so he continues to report out. He's a very analytical guy, which I appreciate. But yeah,
the other candidate that year was Tina Peters. Did you know she didn't even win Mesa County?
Yeah.
Pam Anderson beat her in Mesa County.
On that note, it's just supremely disappointing to me when I have like commentators that I respect very, very highly, and then they'll go to bat for Tina Peters, and they'll just land on that side of the issue. And in my mind, it's like they're so disconnected. Like on the one hand, it's disappointing because they have this podcast where they're talking about truth and absolute reality. And then they're going to bat for Tina Peters, and it's like, why wouldn't you have like Dan Rubenstein on, or Cody Davis, right? It's like, at least entertain someone who was there, who was local, right? Because this particular podcaster's in New York, I think, and it's like you're so far removed. You've just taken people's word at face value and not looked at the hard data, the hard information, the actual series of events,
Well, there's so much nuance, and I think I'm a nuanced guy. I think you are too, Cody. And because I was caught up in that 2021 election, because even Tina said
the City Grand Junction one, yeah.
Yeah, Tina said the 2020 election was clean, was great. She administered it, and then after the fact, obviously people started to want to question it. I still think Mesa County. I mean, we went for Trump. But then the 2021 city council election, it's like, oh, you guys should have won. You're like well-known local conservatives, not really understanding how nonpartisan municipal races go. So then that created all the consternation. But there's so much nuance there. It's like, what did Tina actually do? What was she trying to accomplish? What were some of the concerns? Because we went back and observed the 2021 city council ballots. Yeah. It wasn't an official hand recount, but we went in and counted all those ballots in the clerk's office, the city clerk, and we were off by a couple of votes. So it was a clean election. I legitimately lost that election. I can tell some of my friends that to their face, and they just won't believe me. Yeah. I was there hand counting myself, and they don't believe me. Yeah. They can't believe me because the narrative is so strong on one side or the other, but the nuance is all there in the middle. Because I think Tina had some good intentions early on, and I think the thing ran away from her, and I think a bunch of people got behind her. They were actually asking her to do a lot more nefarious things than she did. Yeah. They wanted to go in, break into the vault and steal the machines and get them out of the Mesa County so that Mike Lindell and his team could analyze them. Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff that was thrown around during that time, and I was around for a lot of it. I heard a lot of that chit chat and that conversation going on. And so it could have actually gone a lot worse than it did. But there's so much nuance in the middle there. So for someone in New York that's just like, oh, I heard this story yesterday, so let's bring someone on and talk about it. Mm-hmm. Even Heidi Ganahl. I like Heidi, but she kind of got caught up in that too. It's like, you weren't here, you don't have all the facts, you don't understand the nuance, and now you're just making some political capital out of it.
But because even me here in Mesa County, it's like I'm learning stuff in this conversation that's like, okay, it's not changing what I think of it, but at least it's adding more information. Yeah. And it's like, how can somebody, no matter how prominent their platform is, how can they pretend to have all that nuance without at least entertaining the idea of, well, maybe I should look at both sides of this, but it's always just, no, we're gonna put this up, we're gonna put the poster up, and we're gonna believe it, and we're not gonna entertain any sort of dissent.
It's the nature of audience capture these days too.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Like this side of the argument isn't winning me anything, but when I post this or say this, holy cow, my numbers go way up. They spike. So then you play into that narrative, and unfortunately, it's human nature.
Right.
But we're playing into that, and you see it with podcasters. Like podcasters will start out strong, and they'll start with something. I really like this person. They're objective. They look at both sides. And then a year or two into their podcasting, their bent is stronger and stronger and stronger towards something because they've been captured by that audience. So those podcasters who are able to resist that, I have a ton of respect for.
Are we going to resist that? Is that
That's the goal. Free to think, right?
Oh, good. Okay.
Let's resist it. Let's have
I'm
different
just making
ideas.
sure.
I don't want to get captured by an audience. We don't have much of an audience yet, but that's okay.
We don't even have any sponsors.
But
I
you
wonder
look
if
at Tucker Carlson and Candace
Oh
Owens.
my goodness.
Oh,
I
yeah.
used to like Candace Owens. I thought she did some really good work. I thought she was really up and coming.
I'm with you
She's
there.
gone off the rails completely.
Off the rails.
And every time she says something crazy, she makes $200,000 on YouTube,
Yep.
you know, on all the clicks and all the reactions.
No matter what it is.
So of course she's going to continue to lean into crazy because it pays really well.
Pays the bills.
But I don't trust anything she says now. I mean, she's legit crazy. And then she needs to slow down a little bit and actually pronounce her words right too. That would be helpful.
Yeah.
That money and power seems
It's
like
crazy.
it has a very corrupting ability.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's also sponsorship capture of this, like, hey, I'm going to sponsor your podcast, but
I'm sure there is.
I want
Yeah.
you to say certain things and certain issues and stuff like that.
I think it probably happens after the contest presented or something, you know, like, hey, I didn't like what you said today. You need to modify your content or something like that, or else we're
Almost
going
like-
to
Or we're
leave.
gonna
It's
pull.
like if
Yeah.
you keep talking about that, and suddenly you're not going to be on our good will anymore.
Yeah.
We're going to try to get sponsored by Taco Bell, but
Yeah.
probably after the
After the whole lettuce
Yeah.
outbreak stuff.
after
yeah,
the Cyclops disease or whatever it is.
yeah. We were talking earlier about when presented with new information. And Greg, this is one of the reasons I just have a ton of respect for you because in 2020, 21, you were really interested in what was going on, but you weren't married to a certain position. And when you were introduced with new information, you saw the new information and you were able to pivot with what you believed. And that's a rare characteristic because most people, they believe something, they're married to it. And the second they're presented with new information, it doesn't jive with what they already believe. And so they just reject it. And they stay in their algorithm, they stay in their narrative, and they look for things that just kind of push that narrative. And so anyways, I appreciate that there are several people within that election movement who have done that. I don't want to name them, but you were one of them who was just like, and I'd like to think that's true of myself. Like if I see new information, I'd adapt my perspective or my view on it because that's sorely lacking in today's public discourse is being presented with good information, new information, and reconciling with it.
Yeah.
Because
Some
then
level.
you walk outside the silo and you see the light. It's like, wow. It can be a painful experience, right?
It's a super painful experience.
And can be kind of lonely too.
It can.
Yeah.
But we need more people like it. And I glom on to people who are like that. Even if I don't fully agree with them,
Yeah.
I like that they're walking outside the silo. One of the guys I actually like to listen to is Bill Maher because he's not attached to anybody.
Right.
I disagree with half the stuff the guy says.
Absolutely.
He makes me
he's crazy
cry.
on some stuff, but there's times when I'm like, okay, he's right on, and he's not living in a silo. He's not living in an echo chamber, and at some level, he's reasonable about new information that he receives.
And he just cannot get a mainstream Democrat to come onto his show.
Yeah.
They do not want to have these
Oh,
conversations.
no way.
Yeah.
He's too rational.
Yeah.
So
Do you think there's an opportunity now, because it seems like the Democratic Party has been so captured by the Democratic Socialists, that there's going to be a big swath of like, okay, the reasonable Democrats will finally be like, okay, we need to start having in the middle conversations and not in the silo conversations. I mean, it seems like we're primed for that a little more than we have been in years past.
There's an opportunity for it, whether that'll happen or not. I've always felt like the Democrats are much more of the fall in line party than Republicans. You know, we're the pull yourself up by the bootstraps, we're mavericks, we're individuals, you know, we're rugged, and we're going to make up our own minds, even within our own party. Man, we circle the wagons and shoot inwards
we do
all the time. Whereas the Democrats, oftentimes you just see they've got the one candidate, they don't run people against each other, and then they just all fall in line. Not always.
just march
but
along that
rule
line.
of thumb, that's been my observation. I could be completely wrong in that. I think in this, we're still seeing some of that. We're seeing some of the more traditional, you know, classical, you know, liberals in the Democrat movement kind of falling in line behind the Democrat socialists. But then you got people like Bill Maher and others that are just like, wait a minute.
I ain't going there.
I ain't going there. This is not what I signed up for.
Yeah.
You know, I actually like the Senate. I like that we have an actual presidency. I like that we
the
have the Supreme
Constitution
Court.
is a good thing.
This Constitution thing has been working pretty good for 250 years.
Yeah.
So I think he's a voice of reason. I disagree with a lot of what he has to say, but every once in a while, you know, he'll say something and he'll challenge someone on his show, and it's like, that's what a lot of us are thinking. You're just saying it out loud.
100%.
I think it's happening in Hollywood too, as you see a lot of these, they're now labeled as sort of conservative Hollywood types, but they were pure liberal back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And then the party left them behind.
Right.
So it seems like there's so many fronts where it's fracturing. It might be a good time to like, okay, let's get rid of the fringe lunatics on both sides and just come back to the middle.
The problem is people are stuck between extreme binaries.
Yes.
Right? They've got the extreme candidate on the right and the extreme candidate on the left. So then they're in their mind they're choosing between the lesser of two evils. You know, who's worse, Mondami on the left, or and I can't think of a good one, but a Victor Marx on the right, who's seen as like a weird exorcist candidate for governor. Again, that's even nuanced in and of itself. But I mean, who am I going with, right?
Right.
And these extreme positions, and I'm not clamoring for just compromise and moderation in the middle, but I think we could do a lot with a candidate who's more right of center than extreme right.
And I think maybe it's just because we're in the podcast era and we're in the era of social media that I think we get excited about those fringe personalities and candidates.
Because those are the viral candidates.
They go viral. They get all the clicks, you know, the Spencer Pratts, the Victor Marks, the Lauren Boeberts, you know. Oftentimes it doesn't go well for them, but sometimes it does. But, you know, I heard the term coined, you know, the horseshoe right. And I think when you look at the real radical left and the radical right, they're getting
together.
really close together. That horseshoe right, they love some central control. They want Trump to coalesce all power to himself. It's like, wait a minute, that's not what our party's about.
The Groypers, are they in the horseshoe right? Would you? The Nick Fuentes types?
I mean, I guess he's on that spectrum somewhere.
Yeah.
He's so far away from like what I consider a true conservative, but
yeah, I don't know. It's just it's weird that there's the Democratic Socialists on the left that seem to be on the ascendancy, and on the right, it's the Groyper class of just disaffected, Gen Z.
seems like right there at the center of the horseshoe is like anti-Semitism, right?
Yeah, that seems to be what they coalesce around. It's just like, the meme where they're shaking hands, the Arnold Schwarzenegger meme. We talked about this.
Yeah, we did.
Did you watch that movie?
I didn't.
Well, there's a lot on the right now too that are all about censoring speech, and it's an attractive proposition when you're in power, and hey, let's go ahead and just censor all that speech because we don't like it. But I know personally people here in Mesa County that when certain things are done at the library or elsewhere, oh no, we shouldn't allow them there, and they shouldn't be able to say those sorts of things. It's like, I mean, free speech goes both ways,
It does.
and that's the part of that horseshoe right and that horseshoe left. They're coming to that place where both sides want to stifle speech, and they want to have coalesce the power all in their one party, and that's dangerous.
Yeah.
Well, and if we're not protecting the most vile of speech out there, then we're not protecting our own speech.
Right. Yep.
See,
freedom of speech.
that's the problem I have with gun control. Is just like it doesn't boil down to whether I'm okay with relinquishing my guns to the government. Am I okay with disarming my neighbor? Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm not okay with. I'm just saying my neighbor is a good guy. I trust him. I live next to him. I have no problems with him. I don't feel it's appropriate for me to say, no, he needs to disarm himself. So, and it's the same argument with free speech of just like, I'm going to protect your guys' rights. And then when I need to speak and say something, I can be confident that I'll be heard just because that right has been protected.
Right, like Elon Musk said, free speech isn't about speech you like; it's about speech you don't like.
Correct, 100%.
Otherwise, we don't need free speech laws.
Yeah.
If it's just all the speech we like to hear, no one cares then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because coming out of that silo again, just like if you listen to the speech that you don't want to hear, that's what can pull you out of the silo, and suddenly, or Plato's cave, I guess, is another good analogy, right? And then you see just more information, and you're saying, okay, the situation, the reality is not what I thought it was, but it was painful in that moment, right? The cognitive dissonance, you can either like do the confirmation bias thing, or you can realign your worldview a little bit, and it's a painful thing. That's probably why people just don't do it.
It is painful.
It is.
And now we have
Cognitive
the-
dissonance is not comfortable either.
Well, it's not.
But that's where, are you going to emerge out of that with a new perspective, or are you just going to stay in your priors? And I think it's much more comfortable to stay in your priors and avoid that cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
And sometimes you end up in kind of out in the desert by yourself for a while when you make those decisions. But
It seems like all that just applies to voting here too, right? Because we have just the extremities, and people are siloed up in them.
Yep.
And let's try to get into if we get enough people into the wilderness, then it won't be the wilderness anymore. It'll be a little civilization.
And that's where conversation and free speech happens, and
That's right.
platforms like this.
Yeah.
And being able to just speak freely and openly and maybe disagree on a few things. Like we would probably disagree on a few of the Tina Peters case,
Sure. Yeah.
you know, nuances.
Yeah.
But we're going to agree on a lot of other stuff. And at the end of the day, like I'm a Reagan Republican. If we agree on 80%, we're friends and we're allies.
100%.
The other 20%, it's important stuff, but
It used to
you
be 80-20. Now it's like 99.9,
Yeah.
0.1.
yep.
If I disagree with you on 0.1, then I can be your friend and an ally.
Yeah, it's like that window is shrunk
yeah.
down,
Shrunk big time.
which is I think it's the way the Democrats think, right? Is there more like the 99? Everybody has to agree on 99% of everything.
Or else you're out.
Fall in line.
Get in line.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but Reagan was before Cody's time, so he doesn't know what kind of
He
Republican
was
is.
president when I was born, so no, he wasn't.
Okay, but just a little bit before.
1985. He was right in the middle of his presidency.
Oh man, how old are you?
40.
So old.
I'm old.
Just an old guy.
Well, anything else, guys? I think we've
covered a lot.
covered a lot and
Yeah.
wrap this thing up. So.
I don't know. I had a question for you, Greg. Just
Yeah.
like if you could just like pin one thing, if you say I want to be treasurer because of this certain thing that I think I can fix, what would that be?
I think we're fortunate in our situation that there's not a lot to fix. And so I want to continue on with the legacy of our last, I'd say 3 treasurers. I think before that we had someone in office that was not term limited, so she was in there for 30 years.
Yeah.
So our last 3 treasurers, they did a great job. Sheila's done really good work. I think she's modernized the department to a certain extent. She's found ways to allow for individuals that aren't a fixed income, that own their house outright, so their only bill is their tax bill, to allow them to make monthly payments instead of once or twice a year, because that can be a pretty big bill. So she's done really good work. And none of those treasurers came out of, banking or a financial background. They came from kind of a secretarial background, but they got in, they learned the job, they did a really good job. So I look forward to jumping in, kind of taking off where they left off. We have Tyler Technologies coming online next year. That's going to be a really big software upgrade. I'm super excited about it. I love that stuff. I love how it's going to integrate with the assessor's office. And so I can't wait to get my hands on that software. I even called the company. I was like, can I look at some training videos? They're like, this is proprietary. That's cute. You're a candidate. Once you're in there, we've got a contract with the county. We'll get you all the training you need. I'm like, all right. I just
keep
thought
your
there's like a
distance.
YouTube video I could watch. No, it doesn't work that way. But so mostly just to springboard off of the good work that's been done. Maybe there's some more opportunity for modernization and just streamlining, but just keep really good customer service. You hear complaints about how government's inefficient and how customer service is terrible. You don't hear that much from Mesa County. I think Team Mesa's done a really good job. Finances are a little bit tight, budgets are tight. And so I think we're going to have to get a little bit more creative with what we have and maybe, stretch things a little bit. I've done that for 23 years in business. That is, no mystery to me at all. And so yeah, look forward to getting in there and getting my
So
my
you're
hands
one
in
of,
it.
you're one of them capitalists.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. I like capitalism too.
It's good.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Awesome. I have noticed. I've been surprised. I don't have a big overlap with the county, but whenever I go into the county central services, it's always like, well, that was pleasantly quick and
Yeah.
a friendly service, and
Yep.
so I can echo that in my own capacity of just, let's continue that because it seems like it's on a good path.
Yeah, that's a good outside perspective. Thank you.
Well, cool. Greg, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
You're welcome,
As we always say.
as we always say.